September is right around the corner. We're fighting fantasy football as well as keeping our eye on baseball. I'm actually finishing up a fantasy football auction while we do this, and it's pretty amazing stuff to be able to do that. Jeff Erickson here with Fred Zinkie. Welcome, everybody, to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. Let's talk right away here, Fred, because you have a fun story about Tout Wars in the Tout Wars Champions League, which is a head-to-head league where you have your playoffs starting this week.
Yeah, for sure. I figured I'd save this story and share it at the start of the podcast today. So those who listened to the Thursday episode last week with Todd Zola and several of us who are in the Tout Champions League came on the podcast. It was a fun conversation. The league's just been like really interesting, really fun. We don't play a lot of head-to-head categories leagues. And because of the competition, these are all people who have won multiple Tout Wars leagues. It was really hard for anyone to really separate in the standings. So came down to last week was the last week of the regular season. And a lot of playoff spots still up for grabs. So the week before, and Jeff, I mentioned this, so some people might have heard on the Thursday pod, but the week before I had made, and I think we talked about it briefly, I had made the Kyle Tucker infamous drop for Joshua Baez, got his 3-homer game. That got me a tie with Frank Stamfel and allowed me to control my own destiny last week to try to make playoffs. Mm-hmm. I'm losing to Brett Sayre going into Sunday. And I need to come back and win. I can't tie. I need to come back and win that matchup. So I did one thing smart and then also really got lucky. The one smart thing I did is on Sunday, I claimed the only major leaguer who grew up near where I grew up. I thought, why not? Sentimental value. If I need someone to push me through to take a run, I picked up Cal Quantrill for his Sunday start against the Angels. It wasn't just sentimental value. I obviously thought that he's been pitching really well lately and the Angels don't hit well. So picked him up because I needed to pass Brett in ERA. Cal threw 6 shutout innings. Wow. That got me the ERA point. But going into the Sunday nighter, check this out. Going into the Sunday nighter, I need 2 of these 3 things to happen. I need Ozzie Albies to score a run. I need Ozzie Albies to steal a base. He has 2 stolen bases this year. And I need Raisel Iglesias to get a save. So I need 2 of those 3 things to happen. And the odds of the steal are so low because he's got. So basically, I need Albies to score a run, and I need the Braves to win and Raisel Iglesias to get a save. Anyone who watched the Sunday night baseball game, Ozzie Albies got 2 hits and scored a run. And then I did not watch in the 9th inning. And Raisel Iglesias gave up a run, but he got the save.
So you never saw the double play to finish the game then?
I could not watch it. You
didn't after the fact though and turn it on and go watch the highlight. He made it. It was an incredible 1-6-3 or 1-4-3 double play to finish it.
So it was
either 1-6-3 or 1-4-3. And if it was 1-4-3, that means it was Iglesias and Albies combining together there.
So I was so happy that he got the save, and then that gave me 5. I was 5.5 to 4.5. I won my matchup. And then my mind just immediately started thinking about the first week of the playoffs. So it's like I didn't even want to go back and I didn't know anything about the play. I was just like, oh my gosh, I got through. Like I said, really lucky. Like going into the Sunday nighter, at least the Albies thing and the Iglesias thing tied together a bit. Like I was like, okay, if Albies scores a run, that like ups my odds that there would be a save chance for Iglesias, but you really had to thread a needle on that one. So anyways, so now I'm playing against Ian Kahn in the first round of the playoffs. And we'll see. Maybe I had to really pull out all the stops and use almost all my remaining fab just to get to the playoffs and make moves last week and everything. So I'm running. I feel like my team's running on fumes a little bit. And I didn't set up my roster at all for the first round. Anyways, I ended up moving up to 4th and playing against Ian. And we'll see. So this week it's the top 2 get a bye. So this is kind of like the quarters. And we'll just see where it goes from here. But the big deal about it was that the 6 people who made the playoffs get to play in the league again next year. So we were all like just on pins, and everyone who was around the cut line, which was almost everyone, was on pins and needles last week trying to get that
excellent
spot. Yeah, it was. So it's just like I say, like a really fun. It's not all the time that things break your way. I'll remember this the next time something goes horribly wrong for me, and whether it's in fantasy baseball or fantasy football, when I get like a Monday pitcher scratched, 0s for the week or something like that in an FBC league, I'll remember like, okay, there was that day where I got really lucky on Sunday Night Baseball.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely there. That's awesome. And, it shows the fun of head to head. And to rebut Uncle Ted, a 4 seed can't win roto. No, but they can win the World Series. I mean, that's why it's baseball there. I mean, you have playoffs. If you don't want to have playoffs, well, that's fine. That's your prerogative, but it can work both ways.
I agree. I'm very, like most of us who work in the industry, very, very, very roto-centric.
Yes.
Writing for Yahoo has made me much more head-to-head aware because it's their default setting. But playing it, the more I play it, the more I can see why it is so fun. The fresh start every week, is rejuvenating, just like it is in fantasy football. It is rejuvenating where you're like, oh, last week I had weeks where I was like, oh, last week's just a total disaster. Whatever. I lost the game last week. Fresh start. Let's see if we can get the roster back on track. That part of it is really fun. And the head-to-head matchups at the end, are going to be really fun. So I get why Roto is awesome for sure.
Yeah, and it's awesome. That's almost all what I play. I almost play no head-to-head points.
Roto is more of a pure champion. I get, like Uncle Ted said.
Yeah.
But the head-to-head is fun. Just like you said, just like they can win the World Series. Does the best baseball team win the World Series every year? Of course not. No. Right? Does the best football team win the Super Bowl every year? Of course not. Some of it is just teams that get hot or lucky or whatever in key moments at the end of the season. So that's the way our actual sports that we spend all our time following. They're all not. What is it? It's only European soccer, right? Some of the Premier Leagues that award their title. Some of the European soccer leagues, you're more of a fan of that, Jeff, than I am, but some of the European soccer leagues award their title just on best regular season record.
Yeah.
They're de facto roto soccer leagues.
But right? You know what the funny thing is? But soccer strikes that balance though, because they have the FA Cup in England. They have the Champions League, which is, is a playoff. So you get a taste of everything.
That's right. Yeah, for sure. So, and I used to find it weird that soccer teams would get their championship. You'd hear on, Sports Center or something, they won their championship and they still had 2 or 3 more games to play, because they clinched first place. I was like, oh, that's weird. It's anticlimactic. It is a little bit. And Roto is a little anticlimactic, right? How many leagues do we have now where we're like, oh, we already know who's going to win, or we're down to 2 teams or something like that. So, anyways, but so I see the value in both of them. I'm definitely going to keep some head-to-head in my portfolio now every season.
Yeah. Someday I hope to qualify for Tout Wars Champions League, but that's why we have you on here. You're the good fantasy player.
Oh gosh. I don't think that's the case at all. But anyways, I'm glad I can play in it now for another year, because I think I actually learned a lot about playing in head-to-head. It's one thing to write about it. It's more doing it myself this year. I think I learned more about it. So I'm hoping I'm better at playing it next year. I think the other 5 managers who qualified will probably all say the same thing. I think I made rookie mistakes at times this year that I learned from. So, and I definitely think there was a time in June, July where life was busy and I took my foot off the gas a little bit with my team, and it almost cost me making it through. So that's the other part. You really have to stay attentive every week.
Indeed. Yeah. So I like it. I think it's fun. And the Champions League too, there will be some relegation if you don't do well. There's incentive to keep trying. Yeah. Let's get into the news. Let's start off with talking about the Mariners. It's going to be a Mariners-centric podcast today. We're going to highlight them in multiple times, but Julio Rodriguez, Cal Raleigh had good games. The big dumper had 3 homers, homered thrice yesterday.
Yeah, I kind of out of nowhere, especially for Cal Raleigh. He can't even get a multi-hit game. His last multi-hit game was on my birthday, July 7th. So it was that long ago the last time he got a multi-hit game. Although he is still hitting the occasional home run. Cal Raleigh's, he hasn't been good at all, but his bigger problem is he just doesn't get any hits. He's still batting 167. He does have 17 homers in 96 games. He was hitting the occasional home run, but all of a sudden yesterday, and just one of those you can't predict baseball moments, although we'll talk about it maybe in a few minutes. But Zach Wheeler was starting for the Phillies. That seems like a tough matchup. Definitely he's in Seattle, not a great place to hit homers. Definitely not a night where Cal Raleigh's going to hit 3 homers, but he did. So he hit 3 homers yesterday, and then Julio Rodriguez also had a really game. And we tend to talk a lot about how bad Raleigh's been, and I get that because he's been epically bad, but Julio's been very disappointing this season. We're talking about someone who's probably going to finish in the 70s for runs and maybe even in the 60s for RBI, maybe 25 homers and maybe 20 steals. Like we talked about him as a 30-30, 100 type player going into the season. Like he's been really
12
disappointing.
on base. It's just really killing him.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
We also,
and he's not getting knocked in when he does get on base, and he doesn't have too many guys on base in front of him either there. So it's a world of bad all the way around.
Yeah. And I'll also mention that unless Rodriguez has a furious finish, this will be the third year in a row with an OPS under 800. The year before that, it was 818, which is like, it's over 800, but not by that much. He thrives off being a potential 30-30 guy, and I said this about Vladdy a lot over the years, where I was just like maybe we have to accept who Vladdy is when we would talk about him. Like he wasn't the 48 homer guy, because every other season he wasn't. And not that Vladdy is who he is this year, but that Vladdy was kind of settling in to be a mid to high 20s homer, maybe 30 homer guy. And we need to stop projecting him to be a 40 homer, 35, 40 homer guy. Like Julio, I think we'll have to step back and look after the season. Like he's 25, he's gonna be 26 over the winter. So he's in his prime. I don't know. I'd be interested to see where he goes next year in drafts. I find even when he has a mediocre season, he tends to get a free pass and go in the first round again the next year. But like I said, this will end up being probably three straight seasons with an OPS under 800. His career OPS now is 788. Like 788's fine. It's good. It's pretty good. It's not great, Right. So I'll be interested to see where he goes next year.
Yeah, me too. A couple of notes on that game too, because not only did Big Dumper go off and J-Rod went off, but keep in mind, Zach Wheeler hasn't pitched well since the All-Star break. The very first game after the All-Star break, he pitched well. After that, he hasn't gone more than 5 1/3 innings. He's had a couple of games where he's gotten knocked around. Yet the total in last night's game was 6.5. That got eclipsed by the third inning. It was 6-2 really early on that one there. So it's kind of an interesting times. Phillies had a 9-game winning streak going into that game too.
Yeah, the Phillies have been playing great and are putting pressure on the Braves. And I always felt all season when you looked at the Phillies roster, even when they were way behind the Braves, like I mentioned this on one of our episodes a couple weeks ago, where the Blue Jays were playing in Philadelphia, and as they were playing the Phillies, I was like, God, this is like team is really good. And the Blue Jays did well in that series. But as I'm just going through the lineup, I'm like, that guy's dangerous. That guy's dangerous. Like, how do these guys not have a better record than this? And then the pitching staff, we talk a lot about how the top end of the pitching staff is so good. Right. So like Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Arias, like Alec Boehm's even respectable. Bryson Stott's respectable. Brandon Marsh has had a solid year. Like I don't know. So you look at that. I'm not surprised that they've had a good run and almost caught up to the Braves. But the Zach Wheeler stuff is really concerning. Going back to his last start in July, I think I put in our notes, but something like an ERA in the 8s over his last 6 starts. So it wasn't just last night. It's been several starts. In the meatball draft, the too early meatball draft, he went really high. Like I think it was like around the 2-3 turn. He's one of the initial starters drafted. I don't know. We'll see how that ages. But we're talking about a 36-year-old who had a really nice return from major surgery, but it had only been a couple months. I don't know. We'll see where it goes from here, but the regression's been really significant. If you're in a tight ratios race, is Zach Wheeler still a must-start pitcher coming up?
I think he is. I think I'm going to write this one off. Seattle's weird. Check out their line scores for the last 8 games. They've been blown out twice, 22-0 and 19-2, but every single game has gone over. They've had a number of 7-score games. They obviously scored a lot yesterday. They're hitting better right now. The funny thing is their pitching is letting them down. Brian Wu is supposed to come back off the IL, and we're going to talk about that. So let's talk about it now. But Bryce Miller has been horrible his last couple outings. They needed to call up Cade Anderson. They probably needed to call him up sooner.
The problem for the Mariners is they just don't have, I agree totally. Call up Cade Anderson, just go to a 6-man, because it's not like they've got 5 dominant starters right now like they were supposed to have. They also don't have an obvious guy to take out of the rotation. You could say though, you could take any of these guys out of the rotation. They're all not pitching well, but they are all kind of premium arms that are part of their future as starters. So calling up Kate Anderson made a lot of sense as a potential shot in the arm. And the AL West is so bad. I know you and Scott talked about that on Sunday night. Like the AL West is so bad that they could easily, with the talent in their rotation, they could easily have 2 solid turns through the rotation, go 7-3 or 8-2, and be like tied for the AL West league. Like that's totally within their possibility. But I would say, other than Logan Gilbert, like there's not, like there haven't been dominant Seattle star. I guess Emerson Hancock continues to hold up his end of the bargain. But Brian Wu, who says he's going to pitch Wednesday. George Kirby's been really disappointing. I'll also be really interested to see where some of these pitchers go in next year's draft. They do still have, Seattle's ballpark at their disposal, assuming they stay with the team, and that's part of their profile. But like so many Seattle starters went in the first 5 rounds this year. That won't be the case this year. I think guys like Kirby and Wu will fall into that, like I was gonna say, like round 7, 8, something like that. Like you were once a 3rd rounder and you're still like in your prime age wise, but we haven't seen it. So I would guess they'll fall maybe there. Maybe Wu doesn't fall quite that far. I don't know, but yeah. And then I wonder, Seattle, from a organizational perspective, will the arrival of Kate Anderson and then the disappointment for some of these pitchers, like will they finally actually move one of them?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Because they never do. Moving Luis Castillo to me doesn't really count. Like he's old and kind of washed up now, and that wasn't moving like a key pitcher piece for a key hitter piece. So
no, it wasn't. It was a clear space sort of thing.
Yeah,
get a reliever, get an arm to some ballast to the back end of the bullpen there. George Kirby goes today, and he's been terrible on the road lately. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, and I think even when you look at Seattle's lineup, and like you said, they've shown signs of life lately, but on the season, they're one of the lowest scoring teams. But when you look at the lineup and you're like Arozarena, Dominic Canzone's having a nice year, Julio, Josh Naylor, Cal Raleigh, Taylor Ward, Cole Young's having actually a solid year for them. Like, again, like you look through that lineup and you think, okay, this should be a league average lineup, like at least. And it's been far from it this year. So it's just, disappointment all around in Seattle this year. But I do still think that the pieces are there for them to go on a run. Like we've been waiting all season. Like, again, like when does Seattle have their 9-game winning streak?
Indeed.
The talent's there.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. All right, let's move on from the Mariners. We're going to be coming back to them anyhow. Pete Fairbanks left yesterday's game, not before putting guys on to help blow Sandy Alcantara's win, and he is on the IL.
Yeah, so I would say that makes Fairbanks, I would say now we've definitely hit the point.
Easy drop.
Yeah, 4.5 weeks left. Any pitcher who goes on the IL, unless it's announced the day he goes on the IL that it's going to be a minimum stay, then he's a really good pitcher. Other than that, like those are pretty tight parameters. Max Fried, that's why I'm mentioning it. Max Fried might be back this weekend, and the Yankees basically said when he went on the IL that it would be a minimum stay. So there's like my Max Fried clause. Every other pitcher, I think, needs to be dropped when he goes on the IL. Calvin Fauché probably becomes the saves favorite. If we're thinking like fantasy spins.
I haven't heard that name in a while, by the way.
Yeah, he got a save the other day. They do have Victor Vodnik, who was a closer at times with the Rockies. But I would say Fauché is probably the leader. I find saves are easier to find on the waiver wire in late August and September than the rest of the season.
For sure.
And for a couple. Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, there's a few reasons there. Like, some of it is that some people just don't care about saves now because the way the standings have shaken out, they're not going to help them much. And then on top of that, you've got some people maybe who aren't paying attention quite as much because their team's fallen out of the race or they're starting to look towards football, things like that. But I find that you can find closers better on the waiver wire. So in a 15-team league, maybe Calvin Fauché is worth grabbing, depending on how things shake out the rest of the week. I would say in a 12, you can probably do better.
Yeah. The whole risk, though, is that you waited too long.
Oh, absolutely. You have to need saves, right? Like you have to both need saves in the standings in a roto league and need saves as far as like in the standings and on your roster, right?
And you got to hope that it's not a timeshare. Like, look at the Mets. Duarte's great, but Senga's still getting chances too. So, you kind of have, and in fact, I'd say Senga's probably getting more chances still. They had the day off too, so there's no rest issue. Senga did give up the home run on Sunday, but I don't know. Is that disqualifying? I don't know.
I think Senga basically is the Mets closer, but doesn't typically pitch on back-to-back days. And like may not get every save chance, but I view Senga kind of, so for Yahoo articles, I often, they're not getting picked up as much. So I find I write about the same names every week, but Ben Joyce, Mason Montgomery, they're way better options, I think, than Senga. They're better pitchers who are probably going to get a higher percentage of their team's save chances down the stretch. And then I think Senga's like in the next tier. And then I would say Calvin Faucher's in like another tier below that.
Man, I love myself some Mason Montgomery. It's kind of interesting. I did Joe Arico's podcast. You were hanging out with Joe and I in Toronto, and he does the podcast for Fantasy Pros. We did 5 guys to pick up for the stretch run last week. And at that point, Mason Montgomery was less than 25% rostered on Yahoo leagues, which speaks to your point that you can pick up guys on the cheap. You and I play in, maybe they're not sicko leagues, but they're deeper leagues for the most part. And Mason Montgomery was gone 3 weeks ago, but he's still available in a lot of leagues out there. He's really good too.
And so I found he disappeared in my 15 team leagues. In early August. And when he got a save or two, and then he disappeared. But like we were just talking about, like disappeared for a reasonable sum of fab, as opposed to if he got a save or two in May, like $200 a fab or something for Mason Montgomery. He was disappearing for just $30 fab or something like that. And he's just been like incredible, like as good as any reliever in baseball during July and August. Like his strikeout rates is ridiculous, and the Pirates seem to be fairly committed to using him in the 9th inning.
He went in the meatball draft. I noticed that. Montgomery did, that is. And I have him in the RotoWire staff keeper league. Now that's the definition of a sicko league. 18-team mix, 7-man reserves. We start 23 players, 14 and 9, the standard old-fashioned roto, but 7-man reserves and 10-man minor league rosters. Once you promote a minor leaguer, you can't replenish it except via trade. But you pick up one of my favorite plays to do in that league is speculate on closers. And if it works, you get a cheap closer for the next year. Sometimes that cheap closer ends up being Daniel Palencia, and he gets hurt and misses most of the year, but that's another story. But I've got a $3 Mason Montgomery next year and a $260 budget. That's fun.
Amazing. I mean, like, could end up, depending on what the Pirates decide to do like Luke Weaver's back there next year, and depending on how they decide to handle things in the offseason, he could be a top 10 reliever next year. Like if they just said going into next year's spring training, like Mason Montgomery's our closer, he's a top 10 reliever next year. Maybe he goes in some sort of timeshare. We'll see how things shake out, but he could very well go into next season just as their closer.
Indeed. All right, let's hit a few others real quick. Willie Adames to the IL, elbow sprain. Got some definition finally on this one here. He had missed some games, came back, and then he said in that last at-bat, it felt pretty bad. Sure enough, he's on the IL.
Yeah, pretty kind of the definition of like underwhelming but didn't kill you type fantasy player. Like if he doesn't come back, we'll see if he comes back or not, but 21 homers, 5 steals, 62 runs, 51 RBIs. Like he hurt you if you took Willie Adames. After 2 straight 30 homer seasons. Didn't totally kill you, but he definitely dragged your team down. So I can say in like a 12, there are enough, especially the new arrivals in the middle infield, like Kalen Culpepper and players like that, like Angel Hanao. Like there's enough out there, especially in 12s, that you can probably replace what you're getting for Adames really easily.
Yep. Yeah. I've have Adames in a few places, obviously easy cut now, but I think I have one league where it's like a kind of a mid keeper for next year in a only league. I think he's around like $18, $20. I don't know what to do with him.
That'll be a tough one. That'll be one to really sit and weigh out, I think, in the off season, like in conjunction with your other keepers.
I mean, we all knew this was going to happen, but it's really funny to see the last year in Milwaukee, he stole 21 bases. He may not steal 21 more bases the rest of his career. It's 12-5. And I'm wondering what the next step is with Willie Adames, but you want to talk about a guy that cashed in his contract here. Willie Adames did that.
Yeah, well, I think the surprising part was that he hit 30 homers his first year with the Giants. I think we all felt like career year in Milwaukee, solid park to hit in, contract year. Okay, now he signed with the Giants, not a good park to hit home runs in, has the contract. He's going to drop off immediately. And he did drop off a bit, but not to the degree maybe that we thought by hitting 30 homers the first year. And then this year we saw the additional drop off.
Indeed. All right, next issue. Let's talk a little Ketel Marte. I cut him in some leagues. It looks like he might be coming back, but is he going to be welcomed back with open arms? What are we getting from Ketel Marte?
Well, from a competitive standpoint, I think he has to be welcome back. I don't know, like the Diamondbacks are right in the thick of things.
Yeah, that's
And
the thing. Yeah,
even though
that's
he's
true.
having a disappointing season, he's still one of their better players. So I would say he will be like Torey Lavola won't be able to control everyone in that clubhouse, but I would say the message from the top will be he's our teammate. Like you need to welcome him back, and we'll see. We'll see where things go from there. I think we've already talked about this, that I feel like a quiet split over the off season and put him in a new market would probably be the best thing for him.
Yeah.
But for the rest of this year, like if he was dropped in one of my leagues, I would be going out to pick him up as soon as he comes back.
Indeed. It's interesting. I did cut him, so that's a bummer for me because I probably didn't need to do that. And it was a 12er at least, so I feel a little less bad about it. And a 15 teamer, if I had cut him, that would have been kind of annoying.
I would say in a 12, like we just named some middle infielders that are often available right now in 12s with all these rookies that have come up. Like he may not outperform those players the rest of the season. We'll see. Like this is a really big unknown. If he came back and just had a 670 OPS or something the rest of the way, I don't think after all this we wouldn't be surprised. So he certainly has the talent to have a 900 OPS after this, but I don't think that's likely at this point. So I don't think you'll hugely regret cutting him in a 12.
Yeah, probably not. Arizona, 2 games out in the wild card behind the Padres, 2 games ahead of the Marlins, 3 ahead of the Cardinals. Yeah, but still, so it's pretty much Padres and Diamondbacks with the off chance of the Marlins still making a run. We'll talk about some schedule quirks in a little bit here. Let's move on because we got a lot of stuff to cover today in a short amount of time. Raphael Devers has looked a lot better lately. This is 2 years in a row where he's gotten off to horrific starts and then kind of turned it around.
Although last year, once he arrived to the Giants, he was like kind of just okay, 807 OPS. I guess he's about the same this year. So last year, he had an 807 OPS after he joined the Giants. This year, he now has a 795 OPS. So he's basically been an 800 OPS player as a member of the Giants. Now, this year, I'm just going to pull up the split. If you take April out, it's going to look a lot better because he had the just awful start to the season. So if we took April out, he's actually an 878 OPS from May 1st on. So, and that's like, I know we're cherry picking a little bit, but like taking off 1 month when we've got 1 month left in the season feels okay. So an 878 OPS. So that's more like, that's the Raphael Devers that we saw in Boston. The thing is, he doesn't play in Boston's old lineups anymore. It's hard to drive in 100 runs, I think, in the Giants offense. So this year, he's probably going to finish with about 32 homers, something like that. That's a pretty Boston-like total from his heyday, but he's going to finish with about 85 RBI, which is a little lower than what we would often see during his good years with the Red Sox. So I think when I'm ranking him for next year, I bet I won't be a Devers guy. Like, I just feel like there'll be some people. The batting average has also been low a couple of years in a row. Like, he's no longer that 270. He hasn't been that 270 hitter since he got to San Francisco. He even was in Boston last year until they traded him. 272 average when they traded him.
Right.
But as a member of the Red Sox, he's a 240 hitter. And we've got over a year of that. So if I'm going to project him next year to be like a 30, 32 homer guy who hits 240 in a not great lineup, I don't know. I don't think he'll come out. I bet he'll still go in the 3rd or 4th round next year. And I don't think I'll have him ranked that high.
I agree. I can almost always find cheaper first baseman too. That's the thing. Good, cheaper first baseman.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It does take him a while to get warmed up, but that batting average plus it's just, the team context is what's going to hold me back. Let's talk some Twins real quick. They won big last night, but they had to hold on at the end. Just Gomez had a bad outing in a non-save situation. You always love it when your closer comes into a 9-2 game, turns it into 9-6. But the Twins are weird. It's either sweep or be swept, it seems like, with them.
Yeah, it's definitely true. They've been all over the map, and where all over the map evens out to them is 2 games out of the wild card. Pretty easy wild card, attainable wild card, but not with the Twins roster. But you're right. They've been, I think for the Twins, they're just like how I said that I was kind of playing with house money now in those tout playoffs. I think the Twins just being in a playoff race is just, they're playing with house money, given where they thought they would be as a franchise this year. With Gomez, Gomez just isn't great. And if you're using him as a closer, like, he's got 52 strikeouts and 30 walks. So and he's a fly ball pitcher. So he hasn't given up a lot of home runs this year, but he's a fly ball pitcher. Like, he has hardly any ground balls. He's probably been fairly fortunate not to give up many home runs. So far this year, he's given up 7. I think if you're desperate for saves, like, by all means, like, he's got, I don't know, about half a dozen saves in August. So absolutely.
I think it's interesting that they kept on using him as the closer even after trading for Hoffman. I thought I was going to lose my closer in labor, but instead Hoffman is like working 7th innings more often than not.
Yeah, I felt like that one could go either way when they traded for him, just having lived through Hoffman, the closer in Toronto. Like, if you're the Twins, you're like, okay, are we going to make this guy a closer right away? Because he's probably our most talented reliever. Mm-hmm. But he was so good as a setup man for years before he became the Blue Jays closer. So why don't we just maybe make him a really good setup man? He hasn't been great as a member of the Twins. He's got a 4.7. And when I say not great, I mean kind. He's got a 4.70 ERA and a 183 WHIP, 7 walks and 7 2/3 innings. He's taken a loss already. So he hasn't helped the Twins playoff push at all.
No, yeah, he hasn't. Speaking of Twins, Kalen Culpepper hitting 340.
Yeah.
Hasn't run yet. No stolen bases. I didn't start him this week in labor. I started Cody Clemens because he's got 8 stolen bases. I just need those stolen bases right now. That's what I'm looking at. And got a tight race. You're making a run in that league as well. Had some tough decisions this week, but I'm benched. Corey Seager had a big day on my bench yesterday, but he again doesn't run. Mickey Moniak's on the road, so I benched him. It's one of those things.
Jeff, you've amassed a really impressive stable of hitters. If you're benching those players in that league at this point in the season, you've done a really good job of, like I said, like, accumulating hitters.
I did do well in hitters, and maybe because I didn't go early closers, sorry, I got distracted by something there a little bit, but I think,
you've done to have in a 15-team league to have good hitters on your bench, like Culpepper, like Seager, like even Moniak, who's having a really nice season, even when they're on the road, like, to have the ability to bench him. They still had 4 games in Washington this week and 3 against righties. So to have the ability to bench those players, like I said, like, you've done a good job. That's a really hard thing. And in roto leagues, it's like in 15-team leagues especially, the ability to amass depth in hitting and pitching is like a huge reason that you win your league. In 12-team leagues, you can hit the waiver wire constantly and, like, work around some of those things, but in 15s, you really can't.
Yeah. So
having made smart draft decisions and smart waiver decisions and actually found, like, sustainable players that you can keep, and then all of a sudden having the ability, you get frustrated sometimes when you see one of your players have a great game on your bench. But if you're seeing guys have a great game on your bench, it probably means that you've amassed, like, a good amount of depth because you have good players on your bench. And that's going to pay off in the long run.
Yeah, it has. And I've stayed pretty healthy lately. I mean, Addison Barger played 1 game for me, basically. No, he had 22 at bats. I don't remember any of them, but they were all bad. So there you go. But yeah, I've gotten power too. That's the thing. I don't have, like, one guy leading all my power. Well, I have Schwarber, so that's not true. But I have a lot of homers in the 20s and teens too. So that's allowed me to try to have this angle where I can try to play guys that have a better chance at running, despite having Kyle Tucker just muck up my team.
Yeah, you see, but you keep him in the lineup either way.
Yeah.
Jumping back to Culpepper, I'll mention that before we get too ahead of things, like, I love to get hyped on some of these guys, but Culpepper, 13 strikeouts to 2 walks and a 4.17 BABIP. So that 340 average, like, with regular batted ball luck, is probably more like a 250, maybe 260 type average. So still off to a decent start, but probably not the start that we think when we see a 340 average.
Indeed. All right. This podcast is brought to you by the good folks over at Circa Sports and Casino. I will be there starting Wednesday night. I was there last week as well, but I'm going to be there for the Circa kickoff weekend. Really excited about that. It's Circa Million 8 and Circa Survivor going for, and they're going big for the 2026 football season. $30 million in guaranteed prizes. Cash in this football season in Las Vegas with 3 Circa Sports contests. Entries starting at $1,000 with no rake. Circa Million, 18 weeks of point spread action, 128 ways to win. The winner takes home $1 million. Circa Survivor, pick one winner each week. Last one standing wins $20 million guaranteed to the winners. And finally, Fred's favorite contest ever, Circa Grandissimo, a massive contest with a $100,000 entry. Enter in Nevada, play from anywhere, $30 million guaranteed. Visit circasports.com/contest for details. I'm signing up one entry for Circa Million and one entry for Circa Survivor. To that end, you use a proxy to make your picks. You register there and you use a proxy to make your picks. I use a guy named Vegas Matty. His site is called footballcontest.com. Talked to him a lot last weekend there. So you can check that out at Vegas_Matty, Matty. And you can check that out. He does great work. He and his partner, Tony, they've done, I've used them for like the last 4 years. So there you have it on Circa Million and Circa Survivor. We're also on the Blue Wire Network. Here are their ads. All right. There we go. There we have it. Our topic du jour, September scheduling quirks. I labeled it 6. It might not be 6, but there's a few of them here we can talk about. Fred, why don't you introduce the topic and we'll get going on the first team.
Yeah, I just wanted to look ahead at the September schedule. So what I did is I looked at schedules starting next week. I know next week's not September 1st on the Monday, but anyway, so we're looking at schedules for the final 4 weeks of the regular season because that's all we care about at this point. And for example, some players you might think I'd rather have player A than player B. But if you looked at their schedule, since that's all we care about, maybe you look at their matchups and you think, actually, no, I wouldn't. I would probably rather have player A than player B over 6 months. But if I only get them for 1 month and this is what the schedule looks like for those respective players, I think I'll take player B. So I wanted some sort of fantasy managers to be able to see some of the most extreme schedule quirks coming up in September.
Yeah. Indeed. All right, so let's get on to it. Who's our first team?
Yeah, the Mariners. Like you said, it's a Mariner-centric show today. So the Mariners the Athletics and the Rockies have by far the 2 worst pitching staffs in baseball. If we're talking about like ERA, like they're both like mid 5s, and nobody else is at 5.
And the Athletics have been tragic since like
since the second half Athletics is in the 6s. So those are the 2 best ones. Seattle's the only team that plays them both in September or the final 4 weeks. But not only does Seattle play them both, but they play the Athletics twice. Yeah. So Seattle plays, from September 3rd to September 20th, Seattle plays 16 games over that 18-day stretch. 10 of the 16 games are against the Athletics and Rockies. And even better, only 3 of those 10 games are in Seattle. The other 7 are either in Sutter Health or at Coors Field. That is as good as a schedule can get in September. So 10 games against the Athletics and Rockies and 7 of them at their hitter-friendly parks. So it's a good time if you're debating, in a 12, so I wrote this for Yahoo. Dominic Canzone was only 20% rostered in Yahoo. So if you're in a 12, me neither. How about Mickey Moniak's I was writing in something today. He's only like 35 or something like that. So there are a lot of 3 outfielder formats in Yahoo. The default settings of 3 outfielder head-to-head leagues. So that part makes sense. But anyways, if you're in a 12-team league and Cole Young is sitting on waivers, quietly, Cole Young is 2nd on the Mariners in both runs and RBI and 5th on the team in homers. But I'll even he was in 15-team leagues. I've seen him on the waiver wire at times over the season because kind of he doesn't really pop. He doesn't have a big prospect pedigree that people talk about a lot. So in some 12s, Cole Young, maybe someone, but that's definitely something for managers to look at this weekend. I would take a look at, if I'm doing sorts on the NFBC site, I would just look at Seattle players by, maybe by at-bats over the last 7 or 14 days and just see if any Seattle regulars are sitting around on your waiver wire.
Yeah. Luke Raley broke my heart by getting hurt. He was having a nice little season. He was cheap. You might think about Victor Robles, Taylor Ward, Robles in a deeper league, even Weston Wilson. Keep in mind, Brendan Donovan is on the IL. Brock Rodden might even be someone of use. If you're the deeper, AL only Tout Wars, I'm using Rodden in a league. So it's something to think about as well that, he's going to get some playing time. Donovan is this is his 3rd or 4th trip to the IL. And this is a concussion IL, but still it's man, got this schedule and then we don't get to use him. It's super frustrating. Next team on your list.
Next up, we have the Padres. So the Padres, in the first half of September. And I think if you're thinking in your league, if you're going to look somewhere the first half or the second half of September, let's get the players now. Let's get them for the first half of September. So in the first half of September, the Padres, they're going to face the Nats, one of the best pitching staffs in baseball to face. They've also got a 4-gamer coming up in a couple of weeks at Coors Field. So it might be time to start thinking ahead on getting some Padres on your roster. Ty France, I think, is long gone in all of our leagues, but Luis Rengifo is still available in plenty of leagues. He's played well in the second half. Now, none of his expected stats or skills really back up him playing really well, but maybe the favorable schedule offsets some skill-based regression. And Jake Cronenworth is someone who's like as boring. I find Jake Cronenworth like as boring as a fantasy player could possibly be, but he plays and he plays. And if they've got some hitter-friendly schedules coming up, like if in a 15-team league, maybe you scour your waiver wire, see if Jake Cronenworth's there, throw him on the end of your bench, especially if we're cutting guys. I do find also like roster spots are at a premium in the NFBC, but in September, I find they're not always quite as much because you start actually cutting these injured players. So instead of stashing a Pete Fairbanks, if he got hurt in May or June, you send him to waivers, and then you're like, okay, what do I do with the roster spot? And we're not really grabbing like next closer guys, and stashing them now. That's not where we're at all anymore either. So those spots are now available. So maybe you can grab a bench spot and be like, okay, sure, I'll take Jake Cronenworth. I'll hold him. And when they play the Nats, I'll throw him in. When they play the 4-gamer at Coors, I'll throw him in.
Indeed. Los Angeles Angels, they lost last night, but they've been kind of pesky lately. They took 2 out of 3 from the Astros last week, helped get their GM fired. I thought that was interesting. The AL West is like the graveyard of GMs this year too. That 3 out of the 5 GMs have been fired there. You note though that they're facing some pitching staffs that are getting worn down right now.
Yeah, so they starting on September 4th, so the second series next week, starting for that series, they'll face some of the weaker pitching staffs in 6 of 7 series. 2 series against the Seattle staff that we've talked about that's really struggled. Whether you fear the Seattle staff or attack them, that's kind of like personal preference at this point. Like if you want to go name value, you avoid them. If you want to go recent production, you attack them. So you can decide which way you want to go on that. Every manager can. But they also face the Pirates, whose pitching staff has really regressed despite the best efforts of Mason Montgomery. And they face the Nats. And they face a Twins pitching staff that's not especially strong either. So, and the interesting thing about the Angels, when I was writing this for Yahoo leagues, like there aren't really Angels that can help in Yahoo leagues because there's not a lot of good Angels. But in the leagues we play in, the deeper leagues, now, and we're not able to. We're like Dominic Canzone, I haven't seen that guy on waivers, all season. In our leagues, Vaughn Grissom playing every day, hitting 3rd or 4th in the lineup. Maybe he can take advantage of that schedule. Christian Moore, I mentioned in the article as someone who had a great AAA season. He's played every day at second base since coming up. So again, maybe with these extra bench spots that you find yourself with in September, maybe you want to grab and stash some of those players.
Yep, indeed. And playing time is king for hitters. And sometimes you have to bet on streaks for pitchers, which is uncomfortable, but sometimes you do it anyhow. Like I picked up Ryan Johnson in a couple leagues. I'm not super comfortable, but he has pitched well in his last 4 starts. So selective ed points for the win. Just don't look at those walks. But
sometimes you got to take a chance at this time of year, especially.
St. Louis Cardinals. Successful season. Not too many guys to pick up right now, but a very nice exploitable schedule.
Yeah. So again, starting for the second series next week, so September 4th, they'll play 18 straight games against teams that currently sit in the bottom half of the majors in second half ERA. So they're not facing like they do have a series against the Rockies and they do have a series against the Nats. It's not like they're not like Seattle where they're just like Athletics, Rockies, Athletics, like that. But it's just consistently favorable. The Coors Field series, obviously very favorable, a series against the Nats, but the other teams they're facing have just all been like below average. Not just like, I've got to grab one, for that. I've got to grab a Cardinal for that series, but maybe something to keep in mind because they are all favorable matchups. With Mason Wynn going on the IL today, he's no longer an option. He's someone who is sitting out there in a lot of 12-team leagues, especially. But Nathan Church sits out there sits on the waiver wire in a lot of leagues. He plays against righties. He could be someone that you can pick up.
Yeah. Mason Wynn looked so good against the Reds in that series last week. Had a game where he just was the player. But nope. Now we won't have him for a while. I'm not really super big on him going forward. Turned out in one league where I am selling, I did not trade for Mason Wynn. It would have been 1 year of Mason Wynn was one of the reasons, but the other was like I didn't see a huge payoff there. All right, next team, my Reds. You're gonna highlight my Reds here, huh?
Yeah, well, we're going to swing. Unfortunately, we're going to swing the pendulum the other way now for the remaining teams. They all have challenging September schedules. It can't all be sunshine and rainbows. And the Reds have such a tough September schedule. In fact, it was so tough that when I was working on the article, I messaged you because I couldn't believe. So in their final 8 series, so that's the series, obviously, that cover the last 4 weeks of the season, starting next week, 2 series against the Dodgers, 2 series against the Brewers, 1 against the Braves and 1 against the Cubs. So that's 6 of those 8 series against teams that are top 5 in the majors in record. Their other 2 series are against the Padres, who are currently in a playoff spot, and
on
the Blue
fire.
Jays,
yeah,
right, and the Blue Jays, who are not in a playoff spot but are actually at least still competing for one. So are still trying to put their best foot forward. It's like such a hard schedule. So Jeff, my first question I wanted to ask about the Reds, and I thought you would be the person for me to ask this question to, is like, what do you think they do with Chase Burns in September? Like, he had a rough one last night.
Yeah.
He hasn't been quite as dominant in August. Maybe he's not, but maybe he's just wearing down a little bit in his first full season as a major league starter. He's been amazing this season. But I guess last night's start wasn't that long. He's going to be at least 40, if not 50 innings above his 2025 total when September starts.
Yeah.
After he makes another start this week. Will the Reds start shortening his starts? Combine the fact that they could start shortening his starts with the quality of the opponents that he's going to face. I don't know. I don't think you can take.
I think they have to shut him down.
Right. So shut him down, or have him make like 3 inning starts.
Yes. How about both?
Yeah. Maybe he makes 3 inning starts, and maybe they throw in the
last year. What did he throw? Like between the 4 levels. 4 levels, my God. First of all, that in and of itself is pretty wild. He threw like 108 innings. He's already at 139 2/3.
Right. So let's say he's at 145.
I'd let him make one more start and let him rest in September.
Yeah. So 145. Let's just say he throws 5 1/3 and he's at 140 and even 145 when September rolls around. That's right. Like, that's almost 40 more than last season. I would say, maybe he just makes 3 inning starts once a week or something for the last 4 weeks.
Don't let him end on a bad note like last night. Have him have a good start and then shut him down.
Yeah. So anyways, I mentioned it because obviously, like, the big thing with Chase Burns is, like, there's probably he's been such a find this year. There's probably a lot of teams in contention in roto leagues or going into the playoffs and head-to-head leagues that have Chase Burns as their best or second best starter. So they may not have him in September. Like, this could be something that really swings, especially head-to-head leagues, but even swings some roto leagues in September. And like I said, then when you even factor in, if he's not making 5 inning starts, then maybe the quality of the competition doesn't matter anyways. And Chase Burns, honestly, he can handle the Braves or he can handle the Dodgers, that part. But I did think for the rest of the Red starters. So I have Brady Singer in a 15-team league. After I wrote this article, like, he's not one of my key guys. He's kind of someone
I hope not.
No, right. But my team is in contention. So my team is in contention, and Singer's someone who's just a streamer. He's probably on my bench 50% of the time since I picked him up maybe around July 1st. He's probably in and out of my lineup at equal amounts. When I look at what the series are in September, I'm actually thinking about cutting him. Like, I don't know if I'm going to ever. Would you start Brady Singer against the Dodgers or the Brewers?
Heck,
or
no.
the Braves?
I wouldn't start him against you. Oh wait, sorry, that's a little harsh to you. But
not
no,
a great baseball player.
Yeah,
it's a fair comment.
I do not. I don't trust Brady Singer on the road. I wouldn't. I'm borderline not starting him tonight against the Giants. Let's just put it that way. I don't roster him.
He had a nice stretch around the All-Star break of a couple like 7 innings. He had like 3 starts in a row where he averaged 7 innings. Gave up a total of 6 runs over those starts. But so he's just like really consistent. Like, for example, he opened August with 3 consecutive starts of 6 innings and 3 earned runs. And then he had a 6 with 4 earned runs. I know what you're going to say. That's a 4.50 ERA. And then the last start's even worse. But just as far as if you're just looking, again, your last starting spot in a 15-team league,
No, I get it. He's
Yeah.
fine.
I think I'm going to drop him on Sunday. Looking at these starts, like I just don't think that there's any chance I'm going to want to start him. Like maybe the time he faces the Blue Jays, but I'm not going to hold on to him just for that.
Reds are historically bad on their West Coast road trips too. Like always bad.
Right. Andrew Abbott, same thing. So if Andrew Abbott's just like a fringe starter on your fantasy team, I have Andrew Abbott on. Gosh, I hope I don't have him on the same team as Brady Singer. That feels like a recipe for disaster. I think they're on different teams, but 4.15 ERA, 140 WHIP. How many of those opponents that I just mentioned are you going to start Andrew Abbott against? He's got 1 win since July started.
I would dive in to look at splits just to see if any of them are especially bad against lefties, but
I guess
before I just give up on Abbott as well. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of upside to chase with him at this point in time. One more team, Fred, the Atlanta Braves.
The Atlanta Braves. So Atlanta plays from September 4th, so starting with the second series next week through to the 20th. They play 5 straight series against teams that are currently in a playoff spot. So they have a good schedule the final week of the season. They've got Reds and Marlins. But prior to that, they have 5 straight series against playoff teams. I think that is a factor, maybe not for their hitters, but I think that's a factor for every Atlanta Braves pitcher except Chris Sale. So you're starting Chris Sale against anyone, but Martin Perez, Tyler Malley's had some nice starts, so maybe you're keeping him. Grant Holmes, I find, is like one step better than Brady Singer and Andrew Abbott, but that's it. Bryce Elder, like those pitchers, like, are you starting those pitchers against playoff teams? I think you got to sit and think about that. Maybe Malley you keep because he's had some really successful starts. Martin Perez has had some effective starts in the second half that none of the underlying numbers support. But
they haven't all year. Yeah.
And I guess maybe the big picture takeaway too from this conversation is if you have like a Martin Perez, sit down on if you're in a Sunday Fab League, you can, now that we're down to 4 weeks, sit down on Sunday and map out his remaining probably 5 starts. And just look and see how many of these starts do I feel like I'd probably start Martin Perez for. And if the answer is like 1, then, and if it's not soon, then maybe it's time to drop him. And
use the roster spot for something you can use. Yeah.
Right. And anyway, so I know it's tricky. Like we can't drop them all, but like we can't drop too many pitchers. We have to have some pitchers to put in. But again, Martin Perez gets so few strikeouts that maybe I'd rather just play Adrian Morejon or someone like that who just at the end of the season is going to have about 7 wins and 4 saves and get just as many strikeouts per week as a 1-start Martin Perez.
Yep. And have
better
great ratios. Yep.
Right. So so I would look ahead definitely with my Reds pitchers and my Braves pitchers and think about that.
All right. We'll finish on that note. Good topic, Fred. Good chat as always. There will be no Flint hockey games or Jeff football auctions ongoing during next week's podcast. So thanks everybody for jumping in as well. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Please, if you are interested in playing Survivor, check out Circa's great contest. We're big fans of Circa over there. All right. Thanks for everybody for listening. Take care.